So this is the tool to use when you want to say no and you are tempted to say yes. I'm Nicole Song, America's Work-Life Balance coach, and this tool is actually related to something really important, which is known as your intuition. So your intuition is your inner guidance system. It's fully equipped. It comes preloaded, which is super powerful, and you have it at all times. It's one of the most powerful tools in the arsenal of your life. You can use your intuition to make decisions from what to eat, to where to go, to making really large, big decisions like what's my next place for my career? Where am I going in my life? Is this person the right person for me to partner with? You can use your intuition to really take you very far in your life. And actually, it is the most trustworthy system that you actually have at your disposal, far more trustworthy than your friends and family. Love those people. And then they're really not the people who can tell you what to do with your life. So when you tap into your intuition, into your inner guidance system and understand how it works, you have far more power and ability and capacity to make decisions for yourself. It's very useful for setting boundaries and starting to get clear for yourself what works for you and what does not. So let's dig in today into intuition and your inner guidance system. So first, let's talk about what intuition is and what intuition is not. So let's start with what intuition is not. Intuition is actually not fear. When we're afraid of something, and sometimes when we get that gut fear, you can mistake that for intuition. In fact, that is not your intuition, it is simply you being afraid. Doubt and worry also play in here. When you have doubt or worry, that also can make you feel like it might be an intuitive hit, but in fact, you're just afraid. You have this percolating ideas or worry about something, and you're trusting that rather than actually trusting what your intuition really is. Judgment, unforgiveness also play into what intuition is not. So when any of those things are happening, it's typically something in the past, it's an old pattern that's cropping up. And those old patterns are not trustworthy. They are not your intuition. And so when those are starting to come up for yourself and you can feel that in your body, it's starting to learn the level of discernment so that you can get yourself into a good place, which is actually where your intuition exists. So you're like, well, how do I know if I can trust it? So when you're in your intuitive place, you feel connected, you feel joyful, you feel peaceful. You have, oh, my favorite, patience. When you're in an intuitive space, you are accessing all of those places, contentment, expansion, happiness, joy, all of those places. So when you're in that kind of connected space, that's actually where your intuition exists. So before you're starting to ask your intuition any questions, which you can, by the way, you can ask your intuition all kinds of questions. Before you do that, you want to make sure you're in a really good headspace. You're in a clear space. You're feeling like yourself. So it might be you want to go move your body, listen to a really powerful and inspiring song or a fun song, dance around. You might go hug your pet and pet your dog, feel really connected to someone in your life that makes you feel really good and expansive. And when you're in that place, that's when it's going to give you the capacity to tune into your intuition. Okay, so the tool that you can use is actually understanding that your intuition is exceptionally good at answering yes, no questions. So you can ask your body yes, no questions. The key is to ask it a good question, because if it doesn't have a clear, easy, simple yes, no question, it has a much harder time answering what it is you're asking. So if you can start to ask your body a question like, is it time for me to say yes to that trip? Is it time for me to say yes to that trip? And you might be, is it time for me to go on this trip? And your body can say yes, or it can say no. Sometimes your intuition says no, and you don't actually really understand why. And it's important to remember that your intuition is sensing and feeling and noticing much more in your life, in your world, than you are possibly capable of knowing. So when you can start to trust your intuition, you can actually start to expand. So I'll give you a personal example. There was a time where my intuition was telling me pretty strongly, it's time for you to go write a book. And at the time I was working 3 different jobs. I was working for the newspaper as a fitness columnist at the Seattle Times. I was also teaching 10 to 12 yoga classes per week. And I was also working for a big yoga company. And I really didn't have space or capacity for any of these things to write a book, right? I was really maxed out. I was working like 50, 60 hours a week. My intuition was very insistent. Every time I asked the yes, no question, it would be like, I'd be like, is it time for me to leave the yoga company job? And it said yes. And it just kept saying yes. And it kept saying yes. And so I said, okay. And I was really afraid. It was my healthcare. It was half of my salary. I was like, how am I going to make it? And I just had to trust it. So I left the job. I trusted it. I took on a few more yoga classes and I started taking writing classes. And so I was taking writing classes in lots of different places. And during that time, I was like, I don't really know what's going to happen. I'm going to get on the internet and look up how to write a book because I don't even know how to do any of these things. I was really in that place of just trusting my intuition. 3 to 4 months after I quit that job, I got an email in the mail from Mountaineers Books. And they said, hey, Nicole, we really love your column in the Seattle Times. We're looking for a yoga writer. Are you interested in talking to us about writing a series of yoga books? Those of you who have been following me may know what the answer was. And that is what led me to my first 2 books, Yoga for Hikers and Yoga for Climbers. And that is truly what happens when you start to trust your intuition. My intuition knew that this offer was coming, that more was coming in my life, but I had to really listen and trust it. So that's an example of a much bigger way of using your intuition to trust. You can also use it to guide your day. You can use it to make decisions if you're feeling like you have a lot of social fatigue or you have a lot going on in your life or you're working too much. You can use your intuition to ask those yes, no questions and then actually start to come up with clear, committed answers. So the practice really for you then is to start to say, okay, let me start to ask myself yes, no questions so first step, get into a really good place, ask those yes, no questions, and then start to listen and get more experience and practice at tuning into your intuition. Your inner guidance system might be a little bit rusty and fatigued. Maybe you haven't been using it too much. The more you practice it and the more you use it consistently and regularly, once you have access to it, that is when you can really start to lead your day and your life from an intuitive place. And if you know people who are very intuitive, the only difference between you and them is they have practiced it over and over and over again. So let me know, drop a yes in the comments if you can commit to practicing asking yourself intuitive questions. Let me know any questions or comments you have about accessing this awesome, powerful inner guidance system that you have inside, and hit like, hit subscribe. Check out my other videos on boundaries. I have lots of conversations in here regularly around boundaries work. And go ahead and check me out. Thank you so much. I'll see you all soon.